Israel to block dozens of aid groups working in war-battered Gaza. Gang steals cash, gold from German bank in Christmas break-in. Hello, good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Otto Othman and you're watching World Today. Israel has warned that it will suspend several aid organizations operating in Gaza for failing to provide details about their Palestinian staff, accusing 2 Doctors Without Borders employees of links to armed groups. The organizations concerned have received formal notice that their licenses would be revoked as of 1st January and were ordered to cease all activities by 1st March. Israel claimed that the organizations did not provide full disclosure regarding the identities and roles of the workers. However, the international medical charity Doctors Without Borders said it would never knowingly employ employees or engaging people in military activities as they would pose a danger to the staff and patients. The charity added it continues to engage and discuss with Israeli authorities and it has not yet received a decision on re-registration. Several non-governmental organizations said the new rules will have a major impact on aid distribution in Gaza, and humanitarian organizations said the amount of aid entering Gaza remains inadequate. While the 10 October ceasefire agreement stipulated the entry of 600 trucks per day, only 100 to 300 are carrying humanitarian aid. On a related note, the foreign ministers of 10 nations expressed serious concerns about a renewed deterioration of the humanitarian situation in Gaza, saying the situation is catastrophic. Now, they said as winter draws in, civilians in Gaza are facing appalling conditions with heavy rainfall and temperatures dropping. The ministers of Britain, Canada, Denmark, Finland, France, Iceland, Japan, Norway, Sweden and Switzerland said 1.3 million people still require urgent shelter support. More than half of health facilities are only partially functional and face shortages of essential equipment and supplies. The total collapse of sanitation infrastructure has left 740,000 people vulnerable to toxic flooding. The foreign ministers said they welcomed the progress that had been made to end the bloodshed in Gaza. However, they said they will not lose focus on the plight of civilians, calling on Israel to take a string of urgent and essential steps. These include ensuring that international NGOs could operate in Gaza in a sustained and predictable way. The ministers also called for the opening of the crossings to boost the flow of humanitarian aid. The United Nations has warned that recent actions by Israel against the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees risked depriving millions of people of basic services such as education and healthcare. Israel's parliament passed new legislation on Monday, formally stripping the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, of diplomatic immunity. The legislation also grants the Israeli government the authority to expropriate the agency's properties in East Jerusalem. UNRWA chief Felipe Lazzarini condemned the legislation as outrageous, decrying it as part of an ongoing systematic campaign to discredit the agency. Filippo Grandi, the outgoing head of the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, also criticized the move as very unfortunate.
UNRWA is a very indispensable organization in the Middle East. And contrary to much of the, frankly, baseless rhetoric that we have heard in the past couple of years, UNRWA is a force for peace and stability. So in a situation, in a region in which you need every bit of stability and efforts towards peace, it would be really irresponsible to let such an important organizations decline further.
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called Israel's recognition of Somaliland illegitimate and unacceptable as he hosted a visit by his Somali counterparts. He said preserving the unity and integrity of Somalia in all circumstances holds special importance in Turkey's view.
Biz bu süreçte Somali'nin toprak bütünlüğünü ve siyasi birliğini kararlılıkla desteklemeye ve Somali halkının yanında durmaya devam edeceğiz.
Meanwhile, Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud said Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu's aggressive position is unacceptable. He called Netanyahu's Somaliland declaration a violation of international law and the start of insecurity and instability, especially for Somalia and the African region.
Strongly rejected Prime Minister Netanyahu's illegal aggression in recognizing part of Somalia's northern regions as an independent state. This aggression and the blatant meddling constitute a clear violation of the international law, the Charter of the United Nations, the Constitutive Act of the African Union, and all established diplomatic norms.
The Dubai financial market saw major stock indexes in the United Arab Emirates trading down on Tuesday after the flare-up in West Asian tensions. Saudi Arabia said on Tuesday that its national security was a red line and backed a call for UAE forces to leave Yemen within 24 hours, shortly after a Saudi-led coalition carried out an airstrike on the southern Yemeni port of Mukalla. The warning represented Riyadh's strongest language against Abu Dhabi yet. The coalition struck what it described as foreign military support to UAE-backed southern separatists, and that the head of Yemen's Saudi-backed presidential council set the deadline for Emirati forces to leave. Saudi Arabia urged the Emiratis to comply with the demand and said that Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are both major players in the OPEC oil exporters group, and any disagreements between the two could hamper consensus on oil output decisions. Now, the Chinese People's Liberation Army PLA Eastern Theater Command on Tuesday released a video footage of its live fire training in the waters to the south of Taiwan Island. The ground forces of PLA Eastern Theater Command organized live fire training while conducting long-range joint strikes with units of the Navy, Air Force and Rocket Force in the waters to the south of Taiwan Island on Tuesday afternoon, with all designated targets hit. The PLA Eastern Theater Command on Monday started large-scale joint military drills around Taiwan Island under the codename Justice Mission 2025. Now, the exercise involved Army, Navy, Air Force and Rocket Force units operating in Taiwan Strait and waters to the north, southwest, southeast and east of the island. The show of force follows a bumper round of arms sales to Taipei by the United States, Taiwan's main security backer. The comments from Japan's Prime Minister that the use of force against Taiwan could warrant a military response from Tokyo. China's top diplomat Wang Yi said on Tuesday that Beijing would forcibly counter large-scale U.S. weapons sales to Taiwan, adding that any attempt to obstruct China's unification with the island will inevitably end in failure. Protests over Iran's soaring cost of living spread to several universities, with students joining shopkeepers and bazaar merchants as the government offered dialogue with demonstrators. Iran's rial currency has lost nearly half its value against the dollar this year, with inflation reaching 42.5% in December. President Masoud Pezeshkian said that he asked the Interior Minister to listen to the legitimate demands of protesters. In a meeting with trade unions and market activists, he said the government will do its best to resolve their issues and address their worries. Government spokesperson Fatemeh Mohajerani said a dialogue mechanism would be set up and include talks with protest leaders. The demonstrations began on Sunday at the city's largest mobile phone market before gaining momentum and include protests in central Tehran by shop owners. They spread to 10 universities across the country, including 7 in Tehran that are among the country's most prestigious. Guinea's junta chief Mamadi Doumbouya has been elected as president after securing a sweeping majority of the vote. Now, this is according to the initial results by the country's election commission. Doumbouya faced 8 rivals for the presidency, but the main opposition leaders were barred from running and had urged a boycott of the vote held over the weekend. According to the General Directorate of Elections, he secured 86.72% of the first round vote, well over the threshold that would trigger a runoff vote. Now, the General Directorate of the Elections noted that voter turnout stood at 80.95%. In late September, Guineans approved a new constitution in a referendum that permitted junta members to run for office, paving the way for Doumbouya's candidacy. It also lightened the presidential terms from 5 to 7 years, renewable once. Coming up, tech-driven rural revitalization takes roots across China. Thieves used the quiet Christmas period to drill their way into the vaults of a German retail bank and make off with at least 10 million euros worth of money and valuables from customers' deposit boxes. The police said on Tuesday that the perpetrators drilled through a thick concrete wall at a branch of Sparkasse Bank in western city of Gelsenkirchen and then broke into several thousand safe deposit boxes and stole a sum estimated the double-digit millions of euros. Now, most shops and banks closed in Germany over the Christmas period starting from the evening of 24th December, and police only discovered the whole after a fire alarm went off in the early hours of Monday. On Tuesday, numerous angry customers gathered in front of the branch in the Bureau district wanting information. Now, police said witnesses have reported that they saw several men on Saturday night carrying large bags in the stairwell of the adjacent parking garage. Now, there were also reports of a black Audi RS6 leaving the garage early on Monday morning with masked men inside. Now, the vehicle's license plate was that of a car stolen in Hanover, more than 200 kilometers to the northeast of Gelsenkirchen. Currently, no arrests have been made and the perpetrators remain at large. A head-on collision between 2 trains on the line that services Peru's Machu Picchu killed at least 1 person and injured at least 40 others. Now, according to prosecutor's office in Cusco, the deceased was the conductor of one of the 2 trains. A dozen ambulances and medical personnel were rushed to the site in a remote Andean area without direct road access. Rail agency Ferrocarril Transandino said the train operated by Peru Rail collided with another belonging to Inca Rail on the single track that links the town of Ollantaytambo with Machu Picchu. Now, the cause of the accident is still under investigation. Machu Picchu was built in the 15th century at an altitude of 2,500 meters and is considered a marvel of architecture and engineering. A UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1983, the ancient fortified complex receives some 4,500 visitors on average each day, many of them foreigners. Most tourists take the train and a bus to reach the historic location high in the Andean mountains. Now, goods train derailed in the southern U.S. state of Kentucky, leaking molten sulfur into the air. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said 31 train cars were involved in the derailment near the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. Now, he said 1 train car leaked molten sulfur into the air, but no injuries were reported. Local media reported that 4 crew members were aboard the train when it derailed. An aerial photo from the scene showed multiple derailed trains, cars lying side by side, and cargo spilled onto a field in a rural area. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear said the derailment in the state stood Tud County prompted local emergency management to issue a shelter-in-place order for the city of Trenton. Media reports, however, said the lockdown was later lifted. Todd County Emergency Management Director Ash Groves revealed that one train car was set afire and another was compromised, and both were carrying molten sulfur. He added hazardous material team was dispatched to the scene. At least 4 people were injured and around 100 were stranded atop a mountain in northwest Italy after a cable car accident. The Alpine Rescue Services said no one was seriously injured following the incident on the Macugnaga cable car, which travels up to the Moro Pass at 2,800 meters altitude. It said it appears that the cabin arrived at the top station to excessive speed, which caused the incident. The fire service, meanwhile, said the accident involved 2 cabins, which impacted the structures of the upper and lower stations. It added 3 of the 15 passengers in the upper cabin were hurt, while an operator at the lower station was also injured. Everyone stranded up the mountain had been evacuated by helicopter. Filippo Bessosi, administrator of the company that manages the cable car, said there had been a technical problem and the cable car did not slow down properly as it entered the station and hit a barrier. He said there was no significant damage to the cable car, which was renovated in 2023 but was undergoing checks. Now, the incident comes at the peak of the ski season when many Italians and tourists flock to the mountains. Cross-Channel train services were gradually resuming on Tuesday afternoon after the tunnel that links Britain and France was suspended due to a power supply failure, disrupting peak winter holiday travel. Getlink, which operates the tunnel infrastructure and the Le Shuttle service carrying cars and trucks, said repairs to the power supply were underway and that traffic services were slowly being restored in both directions. Getlink said the fault was a technical issue and that there was no suspicion of foul play or sabotage. In a statement on its website, the high-speed train operator warned passengers to expect severe delays. A spokesperson said they did not know when services would be fully restored and declined to comment on the number of passengers impacted by the disruption. The disruption affects one of Europe's busiest international rail corridors at the height of the New Year travel season. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for solidarity or solidly advancing rural revitalization across the board and promoting integrated urban-rural development with a strong focus on agricultural and rural moderation. Now, he made remarks at the annual Central Rural Work Conference held in Beijing from Monday to Tuesday. Now, the conference analyzed the current situation and challenges facing the country's rural work and mapped out policy priorities in 2026. Prior to the conference, a meeting of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee put forward requirements for the conference and work related to agriculture, rural areas and farmers. Xi said the year 2026 marks the beginning of the 15th five-year plan period, and it is of vital importance to do a good job in the work related to agriculture, rural areas and farmers. Efforts should be made to ensure grain production and enhance the efficiency of policies that strengthen agriculture, benefit rural areas, and enrich farmers. China should work to keep the prices of imported agriculture products such as grain at a reasonable level and promote stable income growth for farmers. Now, Italy's parliament has approved a modest budget for next year after weeks of wrangling marked by fiscal prudence and contributions from the banks. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said the serious and responsible budget focused limited resources on Rome's priorities, namely families, employment, businesses and healthcare. The budget measures include tax cuts worth €9 billion over 3 years, notably a reduction in rate paid by those earning between €28,000 and €50,000 a year. The average gross salary in Italy was just over €37,000 a year in 2022. Rome is also stepping up the contribution from banks and insurance companies with measures in the budget worth 11 billion euros by 2028. Now, there will also be higher taxes on diesel and cigarettes. In 3 years in office, Meloni's government has helped stabilize the Eurozone's third largest economy. However, the rising cost of living weighs on Italians, while growth is forecast to be a sluggish 0.7% of gross domestic product next year. Many Russians are tightening their New Year's spending this year at a time of economic uncertainty after nearly 4 years of war in Ukraine, despite slowing of official inflation rate and falling prices for some staples. Inflation is expected to drop below 6% this year from 9.5% in 2024, but at the cost of a sharp economic slowdown as the key interest rate has for nearly half of 2025 remained at its highest since the early 2000s. Russia's economy has also been hit by Western sanctions since Moscow annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014 and after it sent troops into Ukraine in February 2022. The government has targeted staples such as potatoes and eggs in a set of policies aimed at curbing price growth. Potato prices fell by 22% this year and eggs prices by 20%, while the overall cost of the popular salad will rise by 5% this year, compared with 8.5% in 2024. Despite these successes, inflation expectations, an important gauge that the central bank takes into account when it sets the key interest rates, have risen over the past 2 months and remain stubbornly high.
Menjimatkan memasak dengan jerit penuh.
Coming up, Arsenal and Villa's streak with 4-1 rout. Lee Zijia's team, Team LZJ, confirmed its head coach Yeo K-bin has decided not to extend his contract with the team as he seeks to pursue personal opportunities in the coming year. In a statement, Team LZJ said K-bin had been a strong presence within the setup, particularly in supporting national men's singles shuttler Lee Zijia, who endured a season disrupted by multiple injuries. Despite not extending his contract, K-bin has agreed to remain in Zijia's corner for the upcoming 2026 Malaysia Open from 6th to 11th January at the Axiata Arena in Bukit Jalil. Meanwhile, Team LZJ announced that former national men's singles player Liu Darren has agreed to return to the team in a coaching capacity. The team described Darren's return as a welcomed addition, given his status as one of the pioneering members of Team LZJ as it seeks to further strengthen its coaching structure. For the record, K-bin was appointed as the team's head coach in December last year. Malaysia Aquatics, MAS, and national head coach Eric Anderson have mutually agreed to part ways. The separation is effective from today, following the conclusion of the SEA Games Thailand 2025 cycle. In a statement, MAS said the decision was reached as both parties move into the next phase of their respective pathways. MAS also expressed its sincere appreciation and gratitude to Eric for his contributions and service to Malaysian aquatics and wishes him every success in his future endeavours. The statement said interim program arrangements have been implemented to ensure continuity, stability and athlete welfare. Further updates regarding the national swimming program will be communicated in due course. MAS reiterated its commitment to supporting athletes and strengthening the high-performance program for upcoming international competitions. At the 2025 SEA Games, the national swimming team won 2 gold, 3 silver and 5 bronze medals. This improved upon the haul of 1 gold, 3 silver and 4 bronze medals from the 2023 edition in Cambodia. Anderson was appointed as national head coach in January last year. Premier League leaders Arsenal slammed the door shut on charging Aston Villa with a 4-1 home thrashing of Unai Emery's side that put them 5 points clear at the top of the table going into the new year. Gabriel Magalhaes' return from injury for Arsenal's narrow win against Brighton and Hove Albion on Saturday was a huge boost for Mikel Arteta, not just for his defensive ability, but also as a source of danger at the other end. The Brazilian's physical presence proved too much for Villa keeper Emiliano Martinez, who flapped at Bukayo Saka's in-swing corner with the ball going in off Gabriel. 4 minutes later, all the nerves of the first half vanished as Martin Odegaard set up Spanish midfielder Martin Zubimendi for his first goal since September. Arsenal secured the points when Leandro Trossard fired home from the edge of the area before Gabriel Jesus came off the bench to add the fourth after a flowing move. Ollie Watkins, who wasted good chances in the first half, grabbed a consolation goal for Villa in stoppage time. Arsenal's statement win moved them 5 points clear of second-placed Manchester City, who can close the gap when they go to Sunderland on Friday. Villa stayed in third place, 6 points adrift of Arsenal after their first defeat for nearly 2 months. Al Nassr's Cristiano Ronaldo and Joao Felix were both on target but were still held at a 2-2 draw with Al Ettifaq in the Saudi Pro League thanks to a double by midfielder Giordano Wijnaldum early this morning. Wijnaldum made a break and beat a defender to fire a rocket high into the top right corner to put the home side on the board first in the 16th minute. Al Nassr had no response in the first half, but just over a minute into the second, Joao Felix fired a low ball from just inside the box past goalkeeper Marek Rodak to level at 1-1. In the 67th minute, it was Joao Felix again when he fired off the rebound with his shot going off the back of Ronaldo and into the goal to give Al Nassr their first lead of the night. But Wijnaldum answered the call and leveled for the Dammam-based team to level at 2-2 in the 80th minute. Al Nassr still hold the top spot in the Saudi Pro League with 31 points from 11 matches, 3 ahead of Al Tawun, who are on 28 points. Al Hilal are in third on 26 points with a game in hand. Japan have never gone beyond the round of 16 at the World Cup, but their coach, Hajime Moriyasu, on Tuesday said the Samurai Blue have their sights set on winning next year's tournament in North America. Japan, who in March became the first team to qualify for the 2026 World Cup, have reached the last 16 in 3 of the last 4 editions. In Qatar in 2022, they beat Germany and Spain in the group stage before losing to Croatia on penalties.
そこで来年のワールドカップに向けて我々は優勝という目標を掲げております。これまで成し遂げられなかった優勝という大きな目標ではありますが、日本なら必ずできる、日本人なら必ずできるということを戦いをもって結果をもって示したいと思っております。
The World Cup will take place in the United States, Canada, and Mexico from 11th June to 19th July. Japan are in Group F of the World Cup, where they will face the Netherlands, Tunisia, and a playoff winner. Their opening match is set for June 14th against the Dutch in Dallas. Well, that concludes today's edition of World Today. In our top story, Israel to block dozens of aid groups working in war-battered Gaza. Till then, I'm Otto Othman. Salam Nisi Madani and have a pleasant day ahead.